Armand Membou is racing up draft boards and could find himself in New England 2 weeks from now. That's where we start on this episode of Locked On Patriots.
You are Locked On Patriots, your daily New England Patriots podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Patriots fans? I'm your host, Nick Cattles, born and raised in New England. Your New England Patriots expert, host of the Everything Pats podcast, co-host of the Greg Bedard Patriots podcast with Nick Cattles, and also a sports talk show host veteran. On today's show, we will tell you who we would put into the Patriots Hall of Fame and take a look at a mock draft that will make some of you very happy. But first, we discuss an O-lineman whose buzz continues to grow. We appreciate you joining the show, making us your first listen, and for being an everydayer. The Locked On Patriots podcast is a proud partner of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode brought to you by the all-new 2025 Nissan Armada. Stay tuned for the Armada Player of the Week later in the show. Armand Membou, an intriguing prospect. Some may say super intriguing. 6'4", 332 pounds, 33.5-inch arms. And Armand Membou is the type of intriguing prospect that if you swing and you hit, you look like a genius organization. Membou himself could make New England look genius. Elliot Wolf, listening to Mike Vrabel over there at the facility, taking the orders from Sergeant Vrabes. If they hit on Membou, if they decide to draft him at number 4, that is one of those moves that people will be talking about for a number of years. They took the high ceiling guy, they bring him in, and he ends up being their starting left tackle for the next decade, protecting the blind side of Drake May. Membou's consensus big board right now, if you look at his ranking, it's number 6 overall. So what are people saying about Membou? The pundits, what are they hearing? Matt Miller from ESPN wrote the following: "We've been told to expect a best player available approach from the Patriots at number 4, as scouts have been saying that New England would be happy with either Travis Hunter or Abdul Carter should they be available. But what if they aren't? Keep an eye on offensive tackle Armand Membou. The Patriots have done a lot of work on him, so Membu could be in play early." Dane Brugler released the beast this week at The Athletic. He had Membu as his second-ranked tackle behind Will Campbell. Here's what Brugler wrote: "As a pass blocker, Membu displays above-average balance, quickness, and a jolting punch in his sets to mirror up and down the arc. He was equally effective in the run game." Now, at Missouri, it should be mentioned, lots of RPO offense, lots of zone runs. Is that what Josh McDaniels is going to do? I'm not so sure. McDaniels' offense in the past, it's been a lot of duo and downhill runs, right? 2 blockers to 1 guy, you get downhill and you do damage. This zone RPO stuff, we'll see how much McDaniels is going to run of that, because he has said he's going to change things. He went to colleges. He went to NFL programs last year when he had a year off, quote unquote, and he talked to a bunch of coaches. He studied a bunch of film. So maybe we see more zone. Maybe we see more RPOs. Back to Brugler. All the talent is there for Membu to become a long-term NFL starting tackle. There's little doubt that Membu is going to be an NFL tackle. There's little doubt that he's an NFL offensive tackle caliber type player. Little doubt about that. And this really is the classic draft debate. I mentioned a couple of minutes ago that Membu, he's the ceiling guy. And we always have this back and forth come draft time. And it doesn't matter what sport we're talking about, but let's just look at football and say, well, do you take the guy that has the high ceiling or do you take the guy that has the high floor? An example of that, you could argue, was last year. The Patriots decided to draft Drake May. Drake May had a very high ceiling, but some people were concerned about his floor because they said if he doesn't iron out some of the fundamentals, if he doesn't figure certain situations out for himself, the footwork and all of that, if he's incapable of fixing those things and working on those things, then the floor is pretty low. But if he works on those things, he corrects the issues that he has fundamentally, watch out because his ceiling is very high. It's the ceiling versus the floor argument. You could look at Will Campbell and say he's got a very high floor. Played in the SEC for a number of years, right, for 3 years. And the sack numbers were fantastic. The pressures, not so much. Gave up, I think it was 18 pressures last year, if I remember correctly. But you look at Campbell, and I think many people would say that he's a safe prospect. He's a safe prospect, maybe not so much at tackle. Maybe you'd have to push him into guard. But people feel relatively safe with the idea of Will Campbell playing in the NFL for 9 or 10 years. Membu has that crazy ceiling. And you wonder if he can reach, if he could fulfill that potential, how good could he be? But here's the big issue with Armand Membou for me. You don't know if he can play left tackle. Now, in the long term, that might not be the end of the world because you could say, well, hey, Nick, who cares? If you draft Membu and he's your starting right tackle for the next decade, that pick was worth it. And I wouldn't argue with you regarding that point in a vacuum. But here's the problem this year in 2025. If you draft Membu and he cannot play left tackle, he can't play left guard. If he is incapable of playing those two positions, then what do you do with Membu? Does he play in 2025? You have to play him, right? You drafted him 4th overall in this hypothetical. If you're drafting somebody at number 4, you best be starting that guy this season. So that's the biggest issue for me. If he can't move to the left side, then what do you do with Morgan Moses? Are you going to try to put Moses over at left tackle in his mid-30s? You signed Moses so he could be your right tackle. The idea right now is that you've got Moses and Owenu on that right side, solidifying your offensive line, at least half of it. Hopefully Garrett Bradbury is ready to take on the job at center. Because right now, you feel decent about center, you feel really good about guard, and you feel really good about right tackle. How many moving parts do you want to undertake because you decided to draft Membu instead of Will Campbell? If you're drafting an offensive lineman at 4, it's between those two guys. So if you take Membu, now you get a bunch of musical chairs happening. You try Membu at left tackle. What if he doesn't work out? Do you try him at left guard? Should you have just taken Will Campbell if you're going to play him at left guard? Because Will Campbell, you feel better about his options there at that position. So what do you do with Membu in 2025 if he can't play on the left side of the offensive line? I don't know. I guess you try to force Morgan Moses to the left. And is that what you want to do? You want to treat the veteran? You want to treat that guy? Just see him at the podium at that press conference announcing the free agents, the leader of men that he is. You want to mess around with Morgan Moses when you feel pretty good about him right now? Do you really want to mess around with that? You might be creating more problems. What if you move Moses to the left and he's just not good? Then you're stuck with no left tackle again and no left guard. Now, I do think you can iron out the left guard stuff between Sidney So, Layden Robinson, and maybe Cole Strange. But that's my biggest issue with Armand Membou. I'm concerned that you draft him at number 4. He can't work out on the left side, and now everything up front is scattered because you still got to figure out left guard. You're hoping Morgan Moses works out at left tackle, and you hope that Membu is really good at right tackle. Because if Membu struggles at right tackle or he plays average football on the right side at the tackle position, and Morgan Moses plays average, if not below average, on the left tackle side, and you're still trying to figure out the left guard position, now you've got somewhat of a nightmare up front. So that's my biggest question. I love the athleticism, but if you draft him and he can't play on the left side, that could mess up a lot of things for your program in 2025, and I do not want a lot of things being messed up in front of Drake May this year. I've seen enough of that stuff the last 2 seasons. I've seen enough bad offensive line play. The Patriots have announced 3 finalists for their Hall of Fame. I'll tell you who my selection is and why coming up next as we continue on with today's episode of Locked On Patriots, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. The Armada Player of the Week is brought to you by our friends at Nissan and the all-new 2025 Nissan Armada. Each week, we're taking a look at our draft prospects to pick one guy that stands apart, the guy we believe showcased the strength and power needed to push the Patriots forward as we look ahead to next season. This week's Armada and clear-cut Player of the Week is, let's go with a round two guy, Jaden Higgins, Iowa State wide receiver. Higgins is a dream big, go big type of ex-wide receiver from Iowa State. Higgins' receiving production increased each of his 4 seasons in college as he conquered the college fields with capability and confidence, much like an Armada. Higgins is a big, rugged, and strong target. When it comes to the Nissan Armada, they say go forth and conquer, and that's exactly what I think Jaden Higgins can do in New England. It's clear that our Player of the Week is out here ready to conquer the road ahead with confidence, just like you can in the all-new Nissan Armada or any of their outstanding vehicles. Take the Nissan Armada, Rogue, or Pathfinder and go find your next big adventure. Shop NissanUSA.com. So we all know that Bill Parcells is going into the Patriots Hall of Fame. That was announced by Robert Kraft down at the owners' meetings. Well, we just found out the 3 finalists. One of these people will join Parcells in the Patriots Hall of Fame this year. Logan Mankins, Julian Edelman, and Adam Vinatieri are your 3 names, and all of them are worthy. You could see all 3 of these guys eventually get in. Mankins, the attitude, the production on the field, on the offensive line. He's your prototypical Bill Belichick Patriots offensive lineman, playing hurt, torn ACL, who cares? Julian Edelman. Do I need to talk about Julian Edelman and what he did throughout his Patriots career and how beloved he is here in New England? And how about old school Adam Vinatieri getting his shot as a first ballot guy for the Patriots Hall of Fame? Again, they are all worthy, all 3 of them. But I am going with Vinatieri. Vinatieri is my pick. If I'm going to sit here, and I would sit here and tell you this, if I'm going to sit here and tell you that Adam Vinatieri should have been a first ballot NFL Hall of Famer, then how can I sit here and not say that he should be a first ballot Patriots Hall of Famer? You look at the NFL and what Vinatieri did in the league for so long. Number 1 in all-time points, ahead of Morton Anderson. We're talking legendary status. Moments. How many moments did Vinatieri have, not only as a Patriot, but also as a Colt when he went to Indianapolis? How many big kicks did he make? How about the longevity and how consistent he was for most of his Patriots career? You just always felt, when there was a big kick to make, Vinatieri was going to make it. You didn't even have to think twice. He was so dependable. And yes, he was once called the best player on the team, as we remember. Vinatieri's 2001 postseason was the foundation of a dynasty. We will look back and we will remember Tom Brady and his epic run, of course, being the GOAT. We'll look at all the different characters that played roles in the story of not 1 but 2 dynasties here in New England. But Vinatieri set that foundation. Brady wasn't great in 2001. He was just trying to hold on for dear life for most of that run, right? He had his moments, but that 0-1 postseason should be remembered for defense and Vinatieri's kick making. That was the foundation of the dynasty. And what we all understand, or should understand, is when we talk about the Patriots Hall of Fame, it's really tough. It's really tough to break down each and every career and say, this guy deserves it more than that guy. That guy deserves it more than this guy. We are fortunate enough to watch a team go through not 1 but 2 dynasties over a 20-year period. That is utterly ridiculous. But when you have 2 dynasties, and when you have those dynasties run through 20 years, and you win a slew of Super Bowls, there are going to be a lot of guys that you look at up and down those rosters and say, he could be a Patriots Hall of Famer. He should be a Patriots Hall of Famer. So we're going to have more and more of these very difficult conversations about who should get in before who. But this time around, for me, it's Vinatieri. The foundation, one of the foundational pieces of that 0-1 team has to be in, right? I mean, the kick against the Raiders, the kick to win the Super Bowl against the greatest team on turf. How does he not make it in the first ballot? I can't see it. I can't see it. If the only vote that was going to count would be my vote, Adam Vinatieri would be first ballot guy in there, no questions asked. Edelman and Logan Mankins, I love you. I appreciate you. I respect you. I know what you did for this organization. Your time will come one day down the road, probably sooner rather than later, but we're putting Adam in before you two. That's what it should be. Is that what it's going to be? I don't think so. I actually think Edelman is going to be in. I think he's going to get in this year with Bill Parcells. I think Edelman is going to get the vote from the fans. I think it's more likely that Edelman gets in instead of Vinatieri. I would put Mankins third on the list out of these three guys. Again, he's more than deserving. But if you're looking at these three guys, I would personally go Vinatieri, Edelman, and then Mankins. But I think Edelman gets in before Vinatieri does because of recency bias. Because everybody's going to remember that unbelievable catch against the Atlanta Falcons in the Super Bowl from years ago. And people more recently saw the impact that Edelman had on the field and off the field, of course, with his friendship and Tom Brady. But I think people will look at this and there will be recency bias. They'll think of the Atlanta Super Bowl, the LA Super Bowl a little less because there wasn't much happening offensively in that game. I was actually at that game. There was not much happening offensively. And people will remember Brady's unbelievable second half, fourth quarter against Seattle in that Super Bowl down in Phoenix. And those recent memories get you all feeling good, right? You get all in your feels. So I think the recency bias is going to help Edelman leapfrog those other two guys. And it's not just he was the most recent guy on the field producing. It's also because of what he's doing right now. Logan Mankins, who knows what he's doing? Like, is like shooting some animal in the woods somewhere far, far away. I don't know. It's not like Logan Mankins is, all over the news and all over the podcast game and on national television talking football on the weekends. But that's exactly what Edelman is doing, right? How many people watch games with names? His popularity is at an all-time high off the field. And that plays a role. In the youth, the younger generation, sound like a guy yelling at clouds in his front lawn, but the younger generation, they will vote in droves for Julian Edelman. Anybody who's 25 to 32 years old is very likely going to be voting for Julian Edelman. So I think Edelman gets in before Vinatieri, but I think Vinatieri should get in before Edelman. He's my first ballot guy. He's more than deserving, and he should get in first. All right, our reaction to the latest mock draft from a local writer is coming up next as we continue on with today's episode of Locked On Patriots, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Mock draft season is in overdrive. And it's not only mock draft season, it's also lying season. A lot of misinformation out there being leaked, folks. Be ready for it. It's the final 2 weeks. It's the final countdown. And there are going to be teams leaking all sorts of false information to these pundits, to these writers, to these analysts. Smoke screens everywhere. Beware of the smoke screens. To try to find the true value of a player in this draft right now is very difficult. The true value of many of these guys are frankly just unknown. It's an unknown for most of these players as we get closer to the draft of how teams truly value them. because these teams are always trying to angle, always trying to find a way to land the guy they want. So beware of smoke screens, beware of the lying season, but also enjoy mock draft season. So let's get to Chad Graff's latest mock draft at The Athletic. And I'm going to cover the first 4 picks that Graff makes in his latest mock. Round 1, number 4 pick overall. Graff has the Patriots drafting Armand Membou. I think we just talked about that guy, right? So Membu gets drafted 4th by Graff in his latest mock. Then Chad Graff comes back, and at number 38, he drafts Jaden Higgins. Didn't we talk about that guy a little bit earlier? Wide receiver out of Iowa State. So number 4 is Membu. Number 38 is Higgins. Round 3, number 69. Of course, the Patriots have not 1 but 2 third-round picks. The 69th pick in the draft, round 3 for the Patriots in Chad Graff's latest mock. Ashton Gelati, an edge out of Louisville. So Ashton Gelati, not Ashton Genty, Ashton Gelati is the first third-round pick for Chad Graff in his latest mock. And then we will finish here with his 4th pick for the Patriots. Round 3, number 77, Basil Tootin, running back out of Virginia Tech. So looking at Chad Graff's mock draft is a pretty interesting exercise because really I think he's trying to mix. He's trying to marry the idea of a player with a ceiling and shooting for that higher ceiling, but also trying to address needs. It's a very delicate balancing act. You look at Membu. Membu, again, talked a lot about him earlier. He's got a high ceiling. And picking him at 4, there, of course, is a risk to it, but he would, theoretically, if you believe he could play left tackle, he would fill the biggest need on this football team right now. So you're not only filling the need, you're also taking the guy with a very high ceiling if he could fulfill that potential. Then you look at Jaden Higgins at 38 out of Iowa State. Similar to Membu in a way, because you hope that he hits his ceiling. You hope that he fulfills that potential because as we've been talking about the last couple of years with the Patriots, they desperately need an X receiver. They need that big-bodied guy who can make catches down the field, and that is Higgins. Higgins is a true bona fide X receiver. He's not playing in the slot. He's not moving around all over the place like a Z and doing different stuff. He's going to be your X, and you hope that he would be your X for the next 7 or 8 years. You hope that he could be the guy that Tyquan Thornton wasn't, but was supposed to be. And then you look at Gelati. And Gelati's interesting. You know, he had 60 pressures. 60 pressures last year. This dude was a monster for Louisville. But it's Louisville. So you have to question who he played against. And could you really see him being that game wrecker at the NFL level? A lot of people will tell you he'd be more of a sub-pass rusher at this point. Maybe he grows into something more. But that's why we talk about ceiling. He plays the edge. That's a need. You do need a young edge player. Harold Landry not getting any younger. None of us are, but especially Harold Landry in the NFL. And then, of course, you've got Chase on a 1-year deal. Who knows if he's going to be here long-term. Anthony Jennings, does he bring the pass rush pop that you hope? Probably not. So getting younger at edge makes a lot of sense in this draft. And bringing a guy in who was highly productive like Gelati makes a lot of sense. But what's the ceiling? Can he hit that ceiling? And when you talk about Tootin, you're talking about somebody with burst. And don't forget, Robert Kraft down at the owners' meetings talked about drafting a speed running back. Vrabel mentioned it at the owners' meetings that they want to draft a running back. So Tootin makes sense. The second of the third-round picks at number 77 overall, you bring a running back in that has burst. And you hope that he can explode year 1 for you as that speed/receiving back. So Graff is trying to marry ceiling with need. Very difficult. Very difficult to pull off. I also find it telling that Chad has 3 of the first 4 picks on the offensive side of the ball. Now, that would make sense because the Patriots invested heavily on the defensive side in free agency, all the names they brought in, and I think that was supply demand. There wasn't a ton of depth in the offensive class. There was a lot of talented players on the defensive side that were available this offseason. I mean, you could just look at the cornerback position where you land Carlton Davis, but there were 2 or 3 other guys that you could have signed. That wasn't necessarily the case when you were looking at a number of positions on the opposite side of the football. So the Patriots, they spent a lot of money on the defense. So now you come back in the draft and you use 3 of the top 77 picks in the draft on offense with Membu, Higgins, and Tootin. Now, tackle position, it's interesting because as we discussed earlier, you're drafting Membu at 4. You better hope that he works out at left tackle, because if he can't make it work at left tackle, then what is he doing? So did you fill the need, or did you think you filled the need? If you thought you filled the need, but you really didn't fill it, that could be a big problem. But if you could take, this is all hypothetical, if you could take this draft from Chad Graff and you could say, as you're looking back, say on like Sunday or Monday, you're looking back at the draft and you're breaking down draft weekend, and you could say, hey, the Patriots, they drafted a tackle and they believe he's going to be a left tackle. They drafted an ex-receiver. They drafted a young edge, and they drafted an explosive running back. I think many Patriots fans would be happy with that draft. I think there are a number of Patriots fans. I don't know if it'd be the majority, because I do feel like the Will Campbell people are creeping in, and it's a growing section of Patriots fandom. But if you're looking at this draft on its face, you got your young tackle, you got your young ex-receiver, you've got an explosive running back to go along with a young, highly productive edge from Louisville. And I believe that a lot of fans would be happy with that. And if Membu can play on the left side, if Membu and Higgins fulfill their potential, I mean, that is the type of draft that sets up Drake May for the next decade. And that's not hyperbole. If you could get Membu on the left side and he works out on the left side, then you got him for at least 8 years, 9 years, 10 years. Hopefully, fingers crossed, longer if he can stay healthy. But if you could put Membu at the left tackle spot and you've got your outside receiver in Higgins, and now you've got, Higgins to go along with Pop Douglas on the inside, and then you pray to the football gods that Jalen Polk wakes up and he could be your future Z, hopefully, fingers crossed. But for 2025, you could have Higgins on the outside, you could have Diggs all over the place, and you could have Pop playing in the slot. That would make a lot of sense. You still got Kendrick Bourne. Hopefully you get the most out of him. You got your 2 tight ends with Henry and Hooper. They can bust down the seam. So if you hit on those picks, if Membu and Higgins, if they both fulfill their potential, Drake May is set up so much better than he's set up right now. And he's set up better now than he was last year. But if you could draft those 2 guys and you hit on both of those picks, now you've got the 2 biggest needs on the offensive side of the football to help your young quarterback. It would be huge. It'd be huge. But there are those questions about Membu that we brought up earlier. And I just can't run away from that question. What do you do if he can't play on the left side? Can he even contribute in 2025? I don't know. That wraps up this edition of Locked On Patriots. Let me know your thoughts on today's topics. Reach out to me on Twitter at NickCRadio. And don't forget to throw a comment in on the YouTube channel, of course. Thank you for making Locked On Patriots your first listen today. For your second listen, check out the Locked On NFL Draft with Damian Parson and Keith Sanchez. Now that the season is over, get the latest draft rankings, rumors, and news every day. Find Locked On NFL Draft on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Have an awesome, and I mean it, have an awesome weekend.